The road to Pine Ridge Overlook twisted like a ribbon of black ice through the snow-covered evergreens. Gavin Whitmore gripped the steering wheel of his silver Escalade with white knuckles, his breath visible in the cold air despite the heater blowing full blast. The winter sun cast long shadows across the windshield as the vehicle climbed higher and higher toward the remote cliff. In the back seat, 6-year-old Ellie hummed softly, her tiny voice mixing with the gentle jingle of her plush rabbit's bell. Her wheelchair was folded next to her, and her legs, wrapped in a fleece blanket, stuck out like fragile sticks. Her face was pale, but glowing with excitement. "Are we almost there, Daddy?" she asked. Gavin forced a smile in the rearview mirror. "Just a few more minutes, sweetheart. This place is really special." Ellie nodded, her face full of innocent trust. "Vanessa said you had a surprise. Is it snow?" The mention of the white mare made Gavin's eye twitch. "Maybe," he said shortly. Snow had been a gift from Ellie's late mother, an elegant white horse with a pink muzzle and gentle soul. The animal had become a lifeline for Ellie after the accident that took her ability to walk. But to Gavin, Snow was just another symbol of everything his life had become. Messy, broken, full of obligations he never asked for. Vanessa had been blunt during one of their late-night talks. "She's not your responsibility anymore, Gavin. Let her go. We can start over, just you and me." And somehow, those words had rooted themselves deep in his gut. He turned off the paved road onto a snow-covered trail marked Restricted Access. It wound through thick pines before opening up to a clearing at the edge of a jagged bluff. The sun was just beginning to dip, casting a golden light over the mountains below. "This is it," Gavin said, parking the SUV and stepping out. He pulled Ellie's wheelchair from the back and carefully lifted her into it. She giggled, clinging to him like she used to when she was younger, before life had tilted off its axis. "I brought carrots," Ellie said, holding up a little Ziploc bag, "in case we see snow. Horses like carrots, right?" Gavin said nothing. His breath plumed in the air as he wheeled her through the snow toward the overlook. The ground crunched under his boots. The wind bit at his cheeks. His heart was hammering, but he kept going. Ellie looked around in awe. "It's so pretty here. I feel like I can see the whole world." He stopped just feet from the edge, where the cliff dropped off steeply into a rocky ravine. The snow clung thick to the pines below, and the sun made the ice on the ledges glitter like diamonds. "Can we come back here with snow someday?" Ellie asked. Gavin's fingers curled tighter around the handles of the chair. "Maybe," he murmured, "but this is just for you." She turned to look up at him. "I love you, Daddy." He opened his mouth to respond but couldn't. Guilt and rage warred inside him. Then he stepped back, his shadow long across the snow. With one push, he sent the wheelchair rolling toward the edge. Ellie screamed, just once, before the chair struck a root hidden under the snow and tipped. She tumbled forward, over the edge, disappearing into the trees and rocks below. Gavin froze, staring at the spot where she vanished. The silence that followed was so absolute, it made his ears ring. Then came the sound that would haunt him, the shriek of a horse. From behind the trees on the opposite slope, Snow exploded into view, her hooves pounding through the snow like thunder. Her nostrils flared, eyes wide, mane flying. She leaped the fence that enclosed the neighboring pasture, galloping full speed toward the cliff. Gavin's mouth fell open. "No, you can't be here." Snow raced past him without a glance and skidded to a halt at the cliff's edge. She whinnied, shrill and frantic, pacing back and forth. Down below, tangled in a snowbank wedged between two rock outcrops, Ellie groaned. Her small body lay twisted but alive. The thick bramble and packed snow had slowed her fall. Snow snorted, then turned and bolted along the cliff's edge, disappearing into the woods. Gavin stood frozen. His heart slammed against his ribs. He ran to his car, climbed in and slammed the door shut. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel. He started the engine and peeled out, wheels spinning as he fled the scene. Behind him, Snow reappeared, carefully making her way down a narrow trail, a forgotten deer path that led into the gorge. She moved with care, picking her steps through the snow and ice until she reached the base of the cliff. There, she nuzzled Ellie's body, her warm breath brushing the child's cheek. Ellie stirred. Her lips were blue, and blood trickled from her brow, but she opened her eyes. "Snow," she whispered. The mare knelt beside her, lying close to shield her from the cold. Through the night, Snow remained by Ellie's side, standing over her, offering warmth and protection. The sky turned dark. Stars shimmered above the mountains. Coyotes cried in the distance, and snow fell quietly over the sleeping forest. But down in the hollow below the cliff, one child and one horse survived the cold, bound by something stronger than fear, stronger than pain. Ellie pressed her cheek to Snow's neck and whispered with the last of her strength, "Don't leave me." And Snow didn't move. Cole Bennett had been splitting firewood when he heard it. A single sharp whinny tore through the early morning hush, a desperate cry that didn't sound like any normal call. He froze, the axe still in his hand, as the sound echoed again from the distant ridge. It was raw, urgent, snow. He didn't need to think twice. Tossing the axe aside, he grabbed his coat and shouted toward the open barn, "Ranger, let's go, boy." The old buckskin gelding, already alert from the noise, trotted out without hesitation. Within minutes, Cole was in the saddle, riding hard toward the snowy trail leading up Cliffside Ridge. The wind stung his cheeks, and the cold cut through his gloves, but he kept going. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Halfway up the ridge, he spotted the white mare. Snow stood motionless, legs trembling but locked in place beside a low outcrop just beneath the cliff. Her coat was covered in frost, and her breath came out in heavy clouds. She didn't move even when Ranger approached, as if rooted to the mountain. Then Cole saw the small shape curled in the snow beside her. "Jesus," he whispered. He dismounted in one smooth motion and dropped to his knees beside the girl. Ellie. Her lips were blue, her skin pale, and her tiny fingers clutched Snow's mane as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Her coat was soaked through, her cheeks raw from the wind, but she was breathing, shallow, ragged breaths, but alive. Cole ripped off his own coat and wrapped it around her. "Hang in there, sweetheart," he murmured. "You're safe now, you hear me? You're safe." Snow lowered her head, brushing her muzzle gently against Ellie's face, as if reassuring Cole that she'd done everything she could. He tapped his phone, but there was no signal on the ridge. No choice. "Easy, girl," he whispered to Snow. "Let me take her." He lifted Ellie gently into his arms. She whimpered, flinching slightly but didn't open her eyes. Snow nickered low and walked beside them as they made their way down the trail, step by slow step through the rising wind. Back at the Bennett's modest ranch house nestled in the valley, Marisol was standing on the porch when she saw him approaching through the snow. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God, Cole!" She ran out as he carried Ellie up the steps. "I need blankets now," he barked. "And call Lila. Tell her to come. It's Ellie Whitmore." Marisol sprang into action while Cole laid Ellie on the couch by the fire. Snow hovered just outside the window, pacing, nickering softly, unwilling to leave. Within 20 minutes, Dr. Lila Morgan arrived with her medical bag, still pulling her gloves on as she rushed inside. She's freezing, Lila muttered, placing a stethoscope to Ellie's chest. But her heart's holding steady. It's a miracle she's alive. She was with the horse all night, Cole said. That mare, she kept her warm, she never left her. Lila glanced out the window. Snow, right? That's the one her mom gave her before she passed. Marisol leaned against the doorframe, one hand on her heart. What the hell happened up there? Cole's jaw tightened. That's what I want to know. By nightfall, Ellie had been changed into dry clothes and wrapped in soft blankets. She hadn't said a word since they brought her in. Not a sound. Just silence and wide glassy eyes. She kept her gaze locked on the window, where Snow stood with her head resting on the wooden fence. Cole sat beside her, gently placing a hand on her tiny fingers. You're safe here, Ellie. You don't have to be afraid anymore. She didn't respond, but her fingers twitched and curled around his hand ever so slightly. Dr. Morgan came back from the kitchen. She's in shock, obviously, but what worries me more is her emotional state. She's not just scared, she's broken. We'll keep her here for now, Marisol said. As long as she needs, you know the sheriff? Cole nodded. Dean Holloway. I'll call him in the morning. They tucked Ellie in for the night, but she wouldn't sleep until they opened the front door and let Snow stand on the porch. The mare settled there quietly, her presence like a warm shadow, her breath fogging the glass as she kept vigil. The next day, Sheriff Holloway arrived just before noon. A man in his late 50s with a weathered face and quiet intensity. He stood in the doorway, his eyes shifting from Ellie to Snow. She hasn't spoken? He asked. Not a word, Cole replied. But she was up on that cliff, Sheriff, and she didn't get there on her own. Sheriff Holloway frowned. Gavin said they were on a hike. Claimed she rolled away from him, went over before he could stop her. Marisol scoffed from the kitchen. A hike? In winter? With a wheelchair and a 6-year-old? Exactly, Cole muttered. Dean looked back at Ellie. I've seen Gavin at town meetings. He's all money and smiles, but I never liked the way he looked at that girl. Always seemed impatient. We need to dig, Cole said. Quietly. Dean nodded. I'll start with the terrain up there. You just keep her safe. That evening, Ellie finally stirred. She reached for the drawing pad Marisol had left by the couch and slowly began to draw. Her hands trembled, but her strokes were deliberate. She didn't speak. She didn't explain. But when Cole glanced at the sketch, his breath caught in his throat. There, in the middle of the page, was a man in a suit pushing a girl in a wheelchair toward the edge of a cliff. And behind them, a white horse galloping through the snow. Back at the Whitmore estate, the phone rang sharply. Vanessa picked it up, her voice thick with feigned panic. Yes? Oh my God, Ellie, she's alive. She turned to Gavin, wide-eyed. They found her. She's at the Bennett's place. Gavin stiffened. What? The horse led someone to her. She's alive. For the first time in years, Gavin's hands trembled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Vanessa's expression darkened. Then you'd better find a way to fix it, fast. But outside a quiet ranch house in Aspen Falls, a white horse kept watch through the falling snow, and a little girl held a secret that would soon bring the whole truth into the light. Ellie hadn't spoken a full sentence in over a week. Not to Marisol, not to Dr. Morgan, not even to Cole, who had taken to sitting beside her every evening with a quiet patience that made even the dog lie still. But each night she drew. The girl who couldn't speak used pictures to scream. Her drawings were strange at first, wide, swirling lines of snow and sky, a cliff edge, and always the white horse in the center. But then they started shifting, taking shape. The figure of a man in a suit became clearer. A wheelchair. the jagged rocks below. It was as if her memory had begun resurfacing in pencil and crayon. Cole didn't push her. He just pinned every drawing on a corkboard near the kitchen, next to family photos and grocery lists. Each new picture told more of the story. Each one made his stomach turn. One morning, while Ellie napped with Snow just outside the window, Marisol stepped into the barn where Cole was fixing a broken fence post. She drew him again, she said quietly. Only this time, she drew his face. Cole looked up. You sure? Marisol held out the sketch. It wasn't exact, childish in form, but the details were unmistakable. The slicked back hair, the squared jaw, the dark blazer, the expression, cold, blank. And beneath the drawing, Ellie had scribbled one word in the corner, block letters that tilted to one side, D-A-D. Cole exhaled, long and slow. It's time. Sheriff Dean Holloway didn't say much when Cole handed him the drawing. He sat in his office, staring at the page as sunlight filtered through the blinds, dust swirling like snow in the quiet. That's not nothing, Dean muttered finally. Still not quite something, but damn near close. She remembers, Cole said. She just doesn't have the words. She's 6, Dean said. This won't hold in court unless she says it aloud, or unless someone else can back it. She's got Snow, Cole said softly. Dean looked up, eyebrow raised. The horse? She saw everything, and that mare's been acting like Ellie's shadow ever since. Dean leaned back in his chair and rubbed a hand over his weathered face. You think a judge is gonna let a horse testify? No, Cole said, but maybe someone else will talk. That evening, as the town's sky turned from slate to black, Cole stopped by the local cafe to pick up supplies. As he paid, an older woman at the counter leaned over and touched his wrist. You're the one with Gavin Whitmore's girl, she said. That sweet child? Ellie, yes ma'am. The woman's name tag read Nora. She had silver hair and deep creases around her eyes, like someone who'd watched too many winters come and go. I used to work at the church daycare, Nora said, back before Vanessa shut the program down. I saw that man grab that little girl by the wrist so hard she cried, told her to stop embarrassing him. He said it right out loud. Cole stared at her. You'd be willing to say that to the sheriff? She hesitated, biting her lip. If it means she's safe now, I will. He nodded. Thank you, Nora. And just like that, the cracks began to spread. Back at the ranch, Ellie had started humming. Not songs with lyrics, just soft, tuneless melodies that filled the kitchen as she drew. Marisol smiled every time she heard it, treating each note like a miracle. Cole sat across from her one night, watching her pencil work move faster, sharper. What are you making tonight? He asked gently. Ellie didn't answer, but she flipped the paper toward him a minute later. It was a scene from the night she was found. Snow standing guard under a starlit sky, her white coat glowing, and a small, bundled figure curled beneath her. But there was something else. 2 small eyes watching from the trees. Cole's brow furrowed. Were you being watched? She shook her head. Then she pointed at Snow's eye in the picture and tapped her own. The horse saw it all, ha, he whispered. Ellie nodded. Then, slowly, with trembling fingers, she wrote something else in the corner. He let go. Sheriff Holloway didn't need more to push forward. He visited Gavin under the pretense of checking in, recording their conversation discreetly. Gavin, smug and guarded, said all the wrong things with all the wrong tones. Then came the unexpected. The next afternoon, Gavin showed up at the Bennett's ranch in a sleek black SUV. Snow reared the moment he stepped onto the gravel drive. Cole came out the front door and met him at the gate. You need to leave, Cole said calmly. I'm here for my daughter. You abandoned your daughter, we both know that. Gavin slipped his hand into his coat. We could make this easy, settle this quietly. I've got a checkbook that says I can make your life a lot more comfortable. Is that how you sleep at night? Cole replied. On a pile of money and lies? I'm warning you, Gavin growled. Hand her over, or I'll drag this through every court in Colorado. That was the moment Sheriff Holloway stepped from behind the barn, holding up a recording device. Funny, he said. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Gavin's face drained of color, and in the window behind them, Ellie watched, with Snow's head resting on her lap, her hand finally steady for the first time in days. Later that evening, Cole sat with her again by the fire. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. Snow knew. He nodded. So did you. She looked at her newest drawing. It showed her, Marisol, Cole, and Snow standing in front of the ranch. The sky above them was bright, safe. You're not alone anymore, Cole said. And for the first time, Ellie smiled. The courthouse in Aspen Falls had never seen a day like this. On most mornings, its worn wooden benches held folks disputing fence lines or arguing over cattle trespassing. But today, every seat was filled with anxious townspeople, bundled in flannel and jackets, whispering in hushed tones. A girl had survived what should have killed her. And now, she was going to speak. Outside the courtroom, reporters clustered like vultures. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Sheriff Dean Holloway stood beside the district attorney, a man named Roland Tate, whose voice was low but firm. Across the room sat Gavin Whitmore in a perfectly tailored navy suit, hair slicked back, eyes unreadable. Beside him, Vanessa wore a sleek gray coat, her makeup flawless, her smile practiced. Their attorney, Mitchell Crane, oozed the kind of confidence only money could buy. Ellie sat quietly in her wheelchair beside Cole and Marisol. She clutched a small white stuffed horse in her lap, Snow's twin in felt and thread. She kept glancing at the glass-paneled side door, where Snow stood tied just outside. The judge had allowed it. It was the one request Ellie had made, to see Snow. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Judge Marianne Carrington, stern but kind-eyed, entered and took her seat. Let's begin, she said, her voice echoing softly. Tate opened with a simple truth. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, this case is not just about neglect. It is about a deliberate act. A child led to the edge of a cliff by her own father, pushed, left to die. Crane rose and countered with an oily grin. This is a tragic misunderstanding. Children's memories are fragile. What we have is a sad accident, a gust of wind, and a grieving father accused unfairly. Dean Holloway was called first. He testified about finding Ellie, about the inconsistencies in Gavin's story, and the drawing Ellie made. The court projector displayed the picture, a stick figure in a suit pushing a little girl toward a cliff. Gasps swept the room. Sheriff, Crane sneered, you're basing your conclusions on crayon scribbles? No, Dean replied evenly. I'm basing it on experience. A child that's scared doesn't draw monsters unless she's seen one. Then came the audio recording. Dean handed over the voice recorder. The court fell silent as Vanessa's voice filled the room. She's a burden, Gavin. Do you want to push that chair for the next decade? End it, now. Vanessa stiffened. Gavin's face drained of color. Crane jumped to his feet. Objection! This is illegally obtained. The judge raised a hand. The device was in the child's possession, and the conversation was not private. Overruled. Vanessa turned to Gavin, hissing under her breath. You said you erased it. The jury stared. Some looked sick, others furious. Then came the moment no one was ready for. Ellie was called to the stand. The entire courtroom stood still as she wheeled herself forward. Marisol walked beside her, but Ellie didn't need help. Her eyes found snow through the window, and she seemed to draw strength from that. "Do you promise to tell the truth?" the bailiff asked. Ellie nodded. Judge Carrington smiled gently. "Ellie, can you tell us what happened that day on the mountain?" Ellie's voice trembled at first. "Daddy said we were going on an adventure. He smiled a lot that morning. But it wasn't real, not like how Cole smiles." Some jurors exchanged glances. "I told him I wanted to ride snow again. He said he had a surprise. And then he pushed me, just like that." Crane stood again, almost frantic now. "Your Honor, she's 6. She's been through trauma." "She's also the only one who was there," the judge replied sharply. "Let her finish." Ellie blinked, tears forming. "I screamed, I fell, but something caught the chair. It didn't go all the way. Then I saw snow coming. She came for me." "And your father?" the judge asked gently. "He didn't come. He just watched. Then he turned and left." That was it, simple, heartbreaking. Outside, snow neighed softly, as if sensing the moment. Gavin clenched his jaw. Vanessa began to sob, loud and theatrical, but no one looked her way. Then Ellie did something unexpected. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper, another drawing. She handed it to the judge. It showed a girl on a white horse. They were riding across a field, sunlight above and no cliffs in sight. The judge took a deep breath. "Thank you, Ellie." The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the forewoman stood tall. "We find Gavin Whitmore and Vanessa Whitmore guilty on all charges." Gavin didn't flinch. Vanessa let out a scream as she was cuffed. "You ruined us, Gavin, you stupid coward." Judge Carrington pounded the gavel. "Order!" The press exploded outside, but inside, the courtroom had gone still. Cole wrapped an arm around Ellie as she watched Gavin being led away. "He's gone now," Cole whispered. Ellie didn't answer. She just looked out the window, where snow stood waiting, steady and calm like always. That evening, back at the ranch, the house was warm with firelight. Marisol tucked Ellie into bed while Cole stood outside with snow, brushing her down under a sky full of stars. "She's stronger than both of us," Cole said, more to the horse than himself. Marisol stepped out beside him. "She didn't just survive," she said quietly. "She told the truth. She set herself free." Inside, Ellie curled up, her breathing slow and even. The stuffed horse rested in her arms. On the nightstand, beside a cup of warm milk, was the newest drawing. In this one, she rode beside other children, smiling, free, and safe. Snow led the way. Tomorrow, her real healing would begin. Sunlight spilled over the snowy peaks of Aspen Falls, casting long golden streaks over the valley below. It was the kind of morning that made even the bitter cold feel like a gift. The town stirred quietly beneath frost-laced rooftops, but at the edge of town, something more profound than routine was taking shape. At the former Bennett Ranch, now officially renamed Brave Hearts Ranch, Cole stood by the freshly painted front gate, tightening the last bolt into a hand-carved wooden sign. The letters gleamed beneath the early sun. "Healing begins where love leads." He stepped back to admire it, just as Marisol exited the barn with a box of paper lanterns. "You're tearing up again," she teased. "It's sawdust," he muttered, blinking. "Lot of it floating around today." Inside the house, Ellie sat in her room, dressed in a cozy wool sweater and her favorite jeans. She tied her hair into a neat ponytail and clipped a tiny silver horseshoe pin to her collar. a gift from Marisol. On her desk was a stack of drawings she'd made over the past few days: snow in the mountains, her new family by the fireplace, kids laughing beside horses. This was her new beginning. Downstairs, volunteers hustled to prepare for the grand opening. There were hayrides to coordinate, snacks to set out, and therapy horses to brush and saddle. Snow, the shining heart of the ranch, stood calm and poised in the corral, already sensing something special in the air. By mid-morning, the parking lot overflowed. Families from all over the county arrived, many drawn by the newspaper stories about Ellie and Snow. Children in wheelchairs and walkers, kids with trauma tucked behind their quiet eyes, all stepped nervously from their cars. Some parents looked hopeful. Others looked exhausted. But when they entered the ranch and saw Ellie waiting beside Snow, smiling with calm assurance, those walls of tension began to fall. "Hi," Ellie said to the first group. "This is Snow. She's been through a lot just like you. She helped me feel brave again. I think she can help you too." A boy, maybe 8, with a prosthetic leg, stared wide-eyed. "Can I pet her?" Ellie nodded. "She loves gentle hands." He stepped forward slowly, then smiled as Snow dipped her head low enough for him to stroke her nose. Across the field, Cole was giving instructions to a group of new volunteers, while Marisol handed out cider and blankets. Dr. Lila Morgan moved from family to family, answering questions, offering quiet comfort. And standing in the back, Sheriff Dean Holloway tipped his hat toward Ellie as his own daughter led a therapy pony named Buttons along the fence. "I still don't know how that little girl survived all she's been through," Dean murmured to Marisol. "She didn't do it alone," Marisol said, her eyes on Snow. "That horse wouldn't let her give up." Later, just before the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Ellie took a moment for herself. She wheeled to the edge of the paddock, watching the kids laugh and ride and brush the horses. Her gaze settled on one little girl sitting alone near the barn, legs drawn up to her chest. Ellie rolled over and smiled softly. "First time around horses?" The girl nodded, but said nothing. Ellie extended a hand. "Come, meet Snow. You don't have to say anything, just be near her." It took a minute, but the girl finally stood and followed. When Snow turned and nuzzled her shoulder, the child's eyes widened, then filled with tears. She buried her face into Snow's neck, trembling. Ellie didn't say a word. She just stood beside her and let her cry. At noon, the entire crowd gathered for the ceremony. A ribbon stretched across the entrance to the new therapy barn, fluttering in the breeze. Cole handed Ellie a pair of silver scissors. "You ready, kiddo?" Ellie looked out at the crowd. Volunteers, doctors, parents, children. Her gaze lingered on Doctor Morgan, on Sheriff Dean, on the kids she'd already seen beginning to open up. She took a deep breath. "This place is for anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "It's for kids like me, and it's because of Snow that I'm still here to say that." She cut the ribbon. Applause rose like a wave. Snow let out a low, approving nicker, as if she understood every word. That afternoon, the ranch was alive with joy. Music played from a small speaker, and laughter rang louder than it had in years. A bonfire crackled in the snow-covered yard. Families roasted marshmallows and sipped cocoa while watching their children ride for the first time. One boy took his first steps toward a horse without a walker. Another girl, nonverbal for months, giggled aloud after Snow gently nudged her hand. Inside the barn, Ellie hung her latest drawing. It was of a line of children on horseback, riding across a starlit field. At the bottom, she had written in careful block letters, "Where love leads, healing begins." Cole stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder. "Think your mom would have liked this?" Ellie looked at the drawing, then out toward snow. She would have loved it. The sky turned lavender as twilight fell. Out in the pasture, Snow grazed peacefully, her white coat aglow beneath the rising moon. At Brave Heart's ranch, hope wasn't a distant idea. It was something you could touch, feel, and ride beside. And in the hush of falling snow, healing didn't just begin, it carried on.